Alright guys, hope you're doing well. My name is Rowlands and I'm a Nutritional Balancing Practitioner, and in this video I'm going to talk about attachment types. Now I suppose attachment types is quite a simplified version of when speaking about codependency and dependency, but in my opinion it's a good sort of first start on understanding this sort of stuff. So one of the biggest issues we have today is dependency. And usually dependency, codependency patterns tend to stem from childhood. So there are three sort of main relationship attachment types. So we have anxious attachment. So anxious attachment is basically needy attachment. People are getting anxious when they're not around the other person, worrying about the other person, wanting to be around the other person too much, having sort of a clinginess to the relationship. Then you got the opposite, which is sort of avoidant attachment types. So it's the opposite of anxious attachment type is avoidant attachment type. And basically avoidants are one that are a little bit, standoffish when it comes to relationships. They like to keep, their hands at a distance. They don't like to merge into another person. They could come across as being very, very independent people. Both of them are quite damaging, really. The anxious one is damaging in a sense that they are way too clingy, way too needy. They can't really stand on their own 2 feet. And have a healthy independency. So generally they're kind of lacking sort of self-love. Generally they struggle with their own needs, and as a result they become very clingy and attached and needy. Now sometimes these people are anxious for a reason, and often the avoidant types will bring that out of them. So basically if you go over to the other side, an avoidant go back to the anxious actually. Anxious attachment types usually comes from childhood, in the sense that the parents or the mother would tend to mollycoddle the kid. They would tend to wrap them up in cotton wool. They would make the kid basically become too dependent on the parent. The parent will do everything for them. The parent will, get the clothes out for them. The parent would decorate the rooms, buy the toys, cook the food. They would do everything for them. I'm not saying parents shouldn't do a lot of that, but the issue is when they do too much of it. So what happens in the childhood is they don't allow this healthy balance whereby the parent is allowing the child to become a little bit more independent, allowing the child to roam free a little bit, allowing the child to, how do you want your room decorating? You know what I mean? Do you want to help me with cook tea? What clothes would you like to wear today? Oh, I want to wear these clothes, Mom. Okay, no problem. Why don't you go and when they're getting a bit older, why don't you go down to the shops by yourself, come back? But what happens is that the parent takes too much, and actually it's because the parent is not lacking love within themselves. So they'll steal love from the child. It's a very sneaky way of doing things, really. It's you cannot tell this is happening. It all looks super innocent. It all looks like the parent just loves the child, they just do everything for the child. But in reality, the parent's actually scared of allowing the child to become more independent, because what that means is that by having that child become dependent on them, it gives them meaning to life, if that makes sense. They suck all the love and the energy from that child. It's very not a nice thing to do, but you see it all the time. It's hard to spot and differentiate, but by allowing that child to become more independent, that can bring up their own demons, their own anxieties, because they feel alone and they feel independent, and they, oh my God, no one's depending on me, if that makes sense. There needs to be this healthy balance between helping the child, of course, and allowing the child to become more independent. And generally what happens is when the child grows older, the child feels like they're independent in the world, and if they need any help, they can ring up mom and dad, and the mom and dad will be there straight away. Usually, that's healthy. The mom and dad, what do you need? Oh, it's problem solved, and then the child can go away and, get on with life. But what happens is the child struggles with that. And when they get older, they have this anxiety attachment type, whereby when they get into relationships, they become dependent on the relationship to provide them with all their love, because their parents, when they was younger, didn't allow them to build up their own sense of love within themselves, because they wasn't allowed to be independent. So moving on to the opposite side is the avoidant attachment types. So these people, usually when they've been brought up in childhood, their parents, I don't say wasn't that bothered about them or didn't care, but the child had to be a lot more independent for themselves. These children often might have had to look after other kids in the family, because their parents might have been a little bit distant, or they might have been an alcoholic, or they might have had mental health problems. So the child had to really stand up on their own 2 feet at a really early age, cooking their own food, going to the shops for the parents, maybe because the parents might have been disabled, stuff like that. Parents have got issues, whatever reason, and the child hadn't got the proper love and attention and care that they needed in a healthy way. So they've become very independent and kind of standoffish when it comes to just life in general. So when they get older in life, they have this avoidant personality attachment, whereby if they're getting into a relationship, and they see any sort of neediness, any sort of come here, I need you, they don't like it. They'll shoot off, and they can do things like they'll kind of be a bit promiscuous, maybe as a way of detaching from that relationship. Quite flirtatious, maybe, as ways to get away from that, and that's where the unhealthy parts come out. Now, both of these attachment types, they need love. They want love. It's healthy, and that's why you'd expect the avoidant attachment type to not want to be in any relationships, but they do, because there is this need for love. And the anxious attachment type, they're always looking for love, constantly looking for love. And what's interesting is what you'll generally find is that the anxious attachment type will generally end up going out with an avoidant attachment type in order to heal, because the anxious attachment type subconsciously sees traits in the avoidant type that they wish they had themselves. So they might see them being independent and going out in life and doing things and doing that, and so it's a subconscious thing. They're attracted to that because they subconsciously realise that there's something that the avoidants have that they don't have. And it's the same for the avoidant type. They see this person who's quite lovey-dovey and quite soft and sort of squidgy, and they allow themselves to maybe melt into other people. And the avoidant type, they're attracted to that because they realise that they've got something that the avoidants don't have. So what you'll tend to find is avoidance and attachments coming together. And you can imagine what happens. It causes a lot of friction sometimes, a lot of problems, because you've got one side wanting, the other side pushing away. And often it's like a lesson, a big lesson for each person to learn about what they need in their lives to become more healthy individuals. And more often than not, especially in the 20s, that these relationships don't particularly tend to work out. And what does happen though, if the individuals have learned a lot from it, is that the anxious person will tend to become a bit traumatized, because if this person's always been going away from them, so traumatized that they're like, do you know what? You know, I'm going to become independent, and I'm going to, you know, and these people need to face these situations, face these fears, and become more independent, and, you know, realize that they need to fill their own cup with love, and realize that they need to, you know, sort their own selves out and sort their own environment out, and stop looking outside of themselves for love. You know, and the anxious, the avoidant type, when they're going out with the anxious, they do see how the anxious can just be quite content in a loving relationship, and they're quite happy to be around the avoidant type all the time, and they don't want to be separated, and, you know, they realize that, wow, like, that's a nice trait to have. And they actually realize, you know what, I need to loosen up a bit, I need to allow people to come into my life a little bit more, you know, I need to just calm down and just relax and settle into things a little bit. And, you know, hopefully each of the individuals have come together and sometimes had a lot of difficulties, but what they've come out of it is they've become more healthy. Now, the Nutritional Balancing Program is excellent for these individuals. I was more of the anxious type, and I ended up going out with an avoidant type, and I learnt my lesson. And I am way more independent now, and I'm in a relationship with someone who's also very independent, but we're not avoidant and we're not anxious. It's a very harmonious sort of situation, and I do put it down to the Nutritional Balancing Program, because you do need a level of health before you start going up the layers and learning about this sort of stuff. And you need energy to be in these sort of relationships, and you know, if God, the universe, feel like that you need to be given certain tasks and certain relationships to heal yourself, then you need to be in a certain position to do that. So that's that for this video. Hope you've enjoyed it. If you are an anxious or avoidant attachment type, then I have a lot of experience with that. Definitely, it's really important to get yourself on a nutritional balancing program to heal the body, heal the mind, become more loving, become more independent, understand self-responsibility and not victimhood, understand healthy boundaries, understand the healthy relationships and dynamics between males and females, and a lot of other different things. So if you want to do that, then send me an email to Lewis, Lewis, at deephealingspace.com, and I would be very happy to help you out. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Over and out.